The listeners just don't know what we go through
To get
give them this
this.
show. They just don't know. Uh, all right. Well, if you are ready, I'll
Yep.
kick us off.
Kick us off, man.
Welcome to the Greatest Lists podcast, a show about music and lists. This season, your hosts Jason and Eric are counting down the top 25 guitar solos of the 80s and the top 25 guitar solos of the 90s. Think your favorite made the list? Tune in and find out. Take it away, boys.
Welcome to Greatest Lists, a music and talk podcast featuring lists of the greatest songs of all time. I am Jason, your host for this episode, and joining me, as always, my co-host Eric. Hey, Eric.
How's it going, man?
Season 2 is upon us.
It's crazy.
We can officially call ourselves the Greatest Lists. This is our second list, right?
We now have two lists, so we are officially Greatest Lists.
Well, we will be making a list of our favorite guitar solos of all time for season 2. And this topic was essentially suggested by you. So what put guitar solos on your mind?
I don't know really. We were, at the end of season 1, we were kind of making a scratch list of what we were going to do for the next season, and I actually have a playlist of 80s guitar solos, and I just thought I'd throw it on the list and see what would happen.
Me and the listeners are not surprised that you have an 80s guitar solo list. I thought you were just going to say I play guitar and I was in a band, mini band.
Well,
so that would cover it.
That also factored into it too. But.
Well, we are actually going to split season 2 in half. So we're planning the 50 episodes, and we're going to do a list of the top 25 from the 90s and a top 25 from the 80s.
Yep.
So no ground rules except for the song has to be released during the decade. At least that's what I used.
Yep, that's all I did too. Yep.
No specific genres or anything like that. It's more towards our personal favorites, as the season 1 list was. But yeah, we're starting in the 90s. Big boom of grunge and alternative, but this list is just kind of almost like a melting pot of rock and blues, and so many great alternative songs and grunge songs in the 90s, but not a lot of them had guitar solos.
No, that's in fact, we even talked about that when we were making our list. We're like, maybe we should change this from solos to riffs, because a lot of them didn't have solos. So
yeah, but I do want to revisit that. So at one point we'll do like the grungiest songs of the 90s or something like that, and go through some of our favorite alternative tracks. But there are some mixed in, so you'll definitely hear some 90s.
Yep.
When you think about 90s rock,
true story,
in this list. So the way we compiled the list is just like season 1, taking turns. We're slotting every other pick. So number 25 is my pick. Eric is number 24, and then number 1 we essentially came to agreement on. I'm going to be hosting the show, but actually Eric is the one that suggested our number 1 song, and I thought it was very deserving. After listening to it, I kind of bypassed a little bit, and went back. Oh yeah, this is great. Fits the era. Yeah, perfect. Yep. So then for the 80s list, Eric is going to start at 25 and so forth, and we'll go through that list later in the year. But I'm not sure if we'll be doing an honorable mentions show. Guessing we will. So if one of your picks doesn't make our list, we'd love to hear about it, and we'll also love to hear about if it does.
That'll be amazing.
We have a couple bonus shows I think in mind, so we'll be releasing those during the season as well. But one final note here before we get started: our podcast segments will be about the same this season. Since some of these picks are not widely known, Eric, we are we're calling our first segment Behind the Music, which will kind of cover the history behind the song, and mainly, at least how I'm setting up, is the career of the guitar player, not necessarily if it's a band. So we'll be keeping the Let's Get Personal segment as our second one. We'll talk about why we chose the song and how it our experience with it over the years, and then we'll wrap the show, of course, with the breakdown, talking about the solo and the song in general, and then As we preached in season 1, the best way to experience greatest lists, people, is get that Spotify premium, because we will play our featured song and our bonus songs at the end. We're going to do bonus songs again in their entirety while you listen. But, if you're using another app, we're glad you're here too. And you can go listen to the songs later if you want. So we are kicking off the top 25 guitar solos of the 90s with a blues guitarist from the Kenny Wayne Shepherd Band. Our number 25 song is Blue on Black.
Behind the music.
So the Kenny Wayne Shepherd Band is, of course, named after lead guitarist Kenny Wayne Shepherd. In a 2011 interview, he stated that he began playing guitar at an early age, around 7, about 6 months after meeting and being pretty mesmerized with Stevie Ray Vaughan. It was during a Labor Day weekend concert in 1984, which was one of his father's promoted concerts. So his self-taught method employed a process of learning one note at a time, playing and rewinding cassettes, and using what he calls a, quote, cheap Yamaha wannabe Stratocaster made out of plywood, unquote. Nice. And learning to play by following along with material from his father's record collection. And according to Shepherd's website, at 16, he signed his first record deal, burst onto the national scene with the release of his 1995 album, Ledbetter Heights, which produced the radio hits Deja Voodoo, Born with a Broken Heart, and Shame, Shame, Shame. Shame, Shame, Shame on Me, because I have not listened to that first album.
Oh, really?
No.
That's really good, especially when you realize he's 16 years old.
Yeah, no kidding. His relentless touring and success on rock radio helped to drive the album to platinum sales. His 1998 sophomore effort, Trouble Is, which is the one that I'm really familiar with, also went platinum, yielding such radio hits as the one we're going to talk about today, Blue on Black, True Lies, and Somehow, Somewhere, Someway. 1999, Live On, spawned the radio hits Into Deep, Shotgun Blues, and The Last Goodbye. 2013, Shepherd further expanded his musical horizons by teaming with veteran rockers Stephen Stills and Barry Goldberg to form The Rides, whose first album, Can't Get Enough, helped to expand Shepherd's audience as well as his musical resume, of course. Shepherd has sold millions of albums worldwide, received 5 Grammy nominations. He's got 2 Billboard Music Awards, as well as a pair of Orville H. Gibson Awards, which is the Blues Foundation's... he also got the Blues Foundation's Keeping the Blues Alive Award, and then 2 Blues Music Awards. So he's well recognized among his peers, as well as had some mainstream success. And he's had 7 #1 blues albums, according to Billboard in their blues charts, and a string of #1 mainstream rock singles, which includes this one. So a little history behind Blue on Black. And this was from a August 2017 interview with Songfacts. He says, quote, "We wrote that when we were down in New Orleans, me and Mark, who is Mark Selby, a blues artist, and Tia Siller, a songwriter." He said, "I had the music and Mark and I were just rolling with the music and trying to develop things up. Tia came up with the idea based on a shirt I was wearing that was blue and black. She knows the 2 colors that were dominant on the shirt, and if you mix those 2 together, black consumes the blue. Doesn't matter anything if you put the 2 together. You still have one color instead of creating a new color." So she built on that idea, and it became this really deep song. It's really up to the listener to determine how they apply it. So many people have applied it to a death in the family, abusive relationship, a broken relationship, or whatever. There are so many different ways. That's what's beautiful about the music and lyrics. It's trying to write a song that the listener can apply to their own experience in whatever way seems fit. And that's one of those songs, unquote. So there's a little bit behind how Blue on Black came about. It reached #1 on the mainstream rock chart in 1998, won the Billboard Music Award for Rock Track of the Year.
Nice.
Outside of Shepherd on his Fender Stratocaster guitar is Noah Hunt on lead vocals, Joe Nadeau on rhythm guitar, or Nadeau, you prefer. I'm not from New Orleans. Did not take French in high school either. So Jimmy Wallace on keyboards, and Robbie Emerson on bass guitar, Sam Bryant on drums and percussion. A couple notable covers of Blue on Black have been released over the years, including Five Finger Death Punch in 2019. That's from their album And Justice for None.
That's such a weird cover.
It is very weird. We'll talk about it a little bit later. The Outlaw remix was with that Five Finger Death Punch mix. Also, Shepard himself on the track. Country musician Brantley Gilbert and Queen guitarist Brian May. That was it was released as a single to benefit first responders through the Gary Sinise Foundation. And that version topped the mainstream rock charts for 5 weeks.
Did not know that.
In 2019. So, gosh, 20 years later. Pretty crazy. And then the single for Blue on Black, the B-side, was the road mix version of the song and a cover of Voodoo Child, which he plays in concert, I've heard. I've never seen him in concert, but
Every
he
concert
usually
he plays
ends.
it. Yep.
He usually ends with that and Blue on Black, from what I've read. Mm-hmm. So there's a little history behind Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
Let's get personal.
Now, I would be lying if I said I'm a true Kenny Wayne Shepherd fan in his career. I don't own anything beyond the Trouble Is album, but I do love it. I remember hearing Blue on Black on the radio on rock stations, and I ended up buying the album on CD. I also remember it being on rotation in my college dorm room as I'm doing homework and things. You know, I just pop on the Trouble Is album. And also remember hearing it when we lived in Atlanta in the early 2000s on 96 Rock. They played the heck out of it.
Yeah.
So it was such a big, I guess you would call like a crossover hit, like a blues rock hit. They played on kind of both formats. But there's a certain amount of blues rock that has gone, you know, more mainstream. Like Kenny Wayne Shepherd has done it. Stevie Ray Vaughan. You think about a lot of his songs. I hear that on rock radio all the time.
Yeah.
There's other artists like ZZ Top I would group in there. Eric Clapton, George Thorogood. It's like a blues rock, you know, mix.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm more of a fan of, blending rock and blues together more than just straight up blues music.
Right.
And basically just what I've, you know, personally collected over the years. But I don't know what it was about that album, but I picked it up. I've put it on several times over the years, and it had been a while since I listened to it, and listening to it for the show, man, some memories started flooding back from college. I'm getting a lot of this already. We're in, you know, we've only picked or only done notes on 2 songs here, and a lot of college vibes in that late 90s era. So, yeah, love the song. What about you? What's your history with Kenny Wayne Shepherd?
Those first 3 albums of his are just, that's a trifecta. I bought the first one, and of course the second and third. I'm a huge fan of Kenny Wayne Shepherd. He just so impressive that, you know, there's a group of those young blues guitarist artists that got signed all around the same time at that young age, and I've always loved him. I had a couple of friends that ran a blues band in the early 2000s that did several of his songs, and just always been a huge fan of that. At least those first 3. I didn't really dive into too much more after those, but those first 3 were on a pretty heavy rotation in my car on the way to work most mornings. So
that's cool. Have you seen him in concert at all?
I have. I've seen him twice. Saw him once back around that time frame, early 2000s, and I saw him not too long ago here in Tulsa. And I mean, as a guitar player, you hate to go see those guys because they make you feel like I'm never going to play guitar again.
Why even try?
I suck compared to this guy. But, he puts on a great show. I mean, he does a lot of, he'll break stuff, or he'll break out and do a lot of covers. You know, like you said, Stevie Ray Vaughan, he does some other stuff too. So yeah, he's really great. He's a really great show as well.
Awesome. We get some blues artists here that come to Montgomery. Do you know Joe Bonamassa?
Oh yeah, I've seen him a couple times too.
Yeah, he's come ridiculous. He's come through here a couple times. I haven't seen him. He's actually, I think, got a show in the next week or so here.
Oh,
and I've been interested maybe to pick up tickets or something just to go hear some good blues rock. But
yeah, he's phenomenal. He's in that same vein of blues rock.
The breakdown.
So first off, if you remember hearing this song on the radio, chances are you haven't heard the complete song because there is a radio edit. Yeah. And it used to make me really mad because it cuts out a portion of the song after the solo. It's not a lot of the song, but how can you cut out some of those sweet licks that Kenny Wayne Shepherd is playing? Yeah. So the solo itself, I love the setup. So we even messaged back and forth about Noah's Hunt, his vocals, and just how smooth they are. But he's got this, that just kind of leads right into the solo. It's a 50-second solo, so it's a pretty good portion of the song. And I love how you can hear a few of his licks like throughout the song, like mainly in the second verse.
Yeah.
He plays a little rhythm and you can hear him, kind of coming in. But I mean, just a great solo. There's a callback too at the end. Like if you hear the outro part of the song, he plays this high note pattern there that he actually plays during the actual solo of the song too. So it's almost like a callback. Na 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 na. And man, it's so great. You could tell he's a student of Stevie Ray Vaughan. Just the way his guitar sounds, and I'm sure they're playing the same style guitar, but just the high chords and the rhythm that he has too. It's wow.
Yeah.
So
definitely tell he's a student of Stevie Ray for sure.
And it's such a fun song to sing along to. The lyrics are great. I just love singing along to it in the car.
Yeah, he's got such a smooth voice and so deep and smooth. I love the way he sings on that album. Noah Hunt, not Kenny Wayne, but
the lyrics though are just so much fun too.
Yeah,
the way they go throughout the song. But what do you like about the song?
He's got, that solo tone he's got is just that fuzz that he plays while he's playing solo. It just sounds so sweet. That's a Stevie Ray thing. Stevie Ray used to play a fuzz face for his distortion on some of his songs. He plays a Strat too, so he's definitely a Stevie Ray Vaughan fan student. But the tone he gets on that it's just classic, and I love that. I just love, and I'm like you. I love most of those blues players will throw licks in between vocal lines. Song, and I love that. I love just hearing them just throw in little things like that because they're never the same. When you see, like, if you hear them on the record and then go see them in concert, they're never the same licks. They're just literally just riffing off the top of their heads, and so the song never sounds the same. You can hear it 5 times and it never sounds the same.
Yeah.
And so he's so understated sometimes when he plays, but he has a great tone. And a great feel.
And that's what I was thinking too. He's got such control.
Yeah.
And he doesn't give you a lot of one thing. He just kind of gives you everything. And he's so crisp with hitting all those chords and down and up, and he'll stay up for a little bit and then he'll come back down. And some great stuff, man. I love the song.
Oh yeah.
So Kenny Wayne Shepherd comes in at number 25 on our top 25 guitar solos of the 90s. Some bonus songs for you this episode. I thought about that 5 Finger Death Punch cover.
No.
Not really a fan. I'm
not a fan of that.
I don't know if it's his voice or
it is his voice. I don't like that guy's voice at all.
Yeah, Noah Hunt is just so smooth with that, and to really growl it out, I don't know. It's almost like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah, no.
But I will, however, pick another track on the Trouble Is album, which we were talking about. It's called I Found Love When I Found You.
Yes.
So I really love the song, maybe even more than Blue on Black, but you said you sang it in a band.
I did. We sang this in a band. We always did it at the end of the second set, right before we took a break. We would do this song, and it's not an easy song to sing, but it's probably my favorite song on that album. So I'm glad I'm glad you included it as a bonus song.
Yeah, It's so good. I've sung that to my windshield so many times, let me tell you. And that's another one that takes me back. I'm thinking about that song, and right around this, I was listening to this album for the first time is when my wife and I started going out
Oh yeah.
for the second time in college in early 1998. And yeah, that song, I remember wailing on that even back then, but such a great track. For the other bonus track, we might as well play some Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Well,
He had he had two albums in the 90s. His last album, The Sky is Crying, in 1991 was released posthumously and became his highest charting album ever at that point. The title track is great, but since we're highlighting solos, I thought we'd play a track that is essentially one long solo. So we're going to do his extended cover of Jimi Hendrix's Little Wing.
Oh yeah.
It's one of my favorites.
That's
by
a
Stevie
great
Ray Vaughan.
tune. Yes.
So it's just an amazing track, just really showcases his talents. And I've heard it a lot on classic rock radio stations over the years. And it's just so good. I love it better than the original, which might be blasphemy, but you know, he extends it so much that it's so great. And it's just him and the drums and the bass. And it's so good. All right. Well, if you have Spotify Premium, which we recommend, stay tuned. You'll hear the bonus songs in their entirety at the end of the episode. Free Spotify users, you get about 30 seconds of the song. But, of course, outside of Spotify, you're hearing nothing but background music, people.
I know,
during
man.
the podcast. So we invite you to visit the Song Whip links in the show notes, and we'll connect you to those songs in your favorite app that you can go and listen to at a later time. But we'd love you to hear your thoughts on today's episode, all of our episodes, of course, for season 2. Twitter is the best place to find us at Greatest Lists, and you can also find us at greatestlistspodcast.com. You can stream episodes right there from your browser. Of course, find us in your favorite listening app. Eric will host the next show, our number 24 selection. He was going to follow my lead with another blues track.
Yep.
So we thank you for listening to the Greatest Lists, and we look forward to continuing our list of the top 25 guitar solos of the 90s in the next episode.
You've been listening to The Greatest Lists.